In this video, we're going to have a look at index laws. So an index is either a power or an index. We could use either word. So let's have a look at the rules. So the rules in the box here, we need to understand. Yes, you need to memorize them, but it'd be a lot better if we understood what was happening. So we're looking at terms that have the same base, and we're looking at what happens with those powers. So if we're multiplying powers that have the same base, so a to the m times a to the n, noting they're both a base of a, we can add their powers or add their index. So we'd have a to the m plus n. The same thing happens when we're dividing, except when we have the division there, instead of adding like we did above, we're subtracting. So we have the same base of a, and we're subtracting m and n. If we have a base that has a power, and then in brackets we have another power, we need to multiply the inside and outside powers. So we'd have a to the m times n. If we have two terms inside a bracket and one power on the outside, each of those terms has the power associated with it. So we'd have a to the power of n and b to the power of n. Similarly, if those two terms inside our bracket are divided by, that power would relate to the top term and to the bottom term. So we'd have a to the n over b to the n. Now we're used to going forwards from left to right with each of these expressions, but in advanced maths we also need to understand that we can go backwards. So if I have a to the m plus n, I could write that as a to the m times a to the n. And as we progress through the course, we're going to have to understand that we can do that as well, and that it goes both ways. Okay, working our way through the examples underneath. Number one, both of these have a base of y, so when we're multiplying them, we add our indices. So 3 plus 2 gives us 5 as the power. Number 2. Now, 3b3 times 2b1. So let's do the numbers first. 3 times 2 gives us 6. And then we can look at the bases. They're both a base of b. So when we're multiplying two bases that are the same, we can add their powers. 3 plus 1. So when we don't have a power in there, we can write that as a 1. So we end up with 6b to the power of 4. Question 3. Y to the 3 divided by y squared. So same base. We go 3 minus 2, which gives us y to the power of 1, which we then write as just y. Number 4. Now remember with these, we can also write them when they're divided by over our divided by bar and write them as a fraction. So if you prefer to do that, that's fine, because as we progress through the course, most of our questions will be written in this format. Okay, but let's just look at it without that format to start with. When we're dividing, we're going to look at things with the same bases. So a to the 5 divided by a squared will give us a3, because we're taking away 5 and 2. B to the 3 divided by b to the power of 1. We've got a base of b, and we've got 3 minus 1. Remember that power there is a 1, and that will give us a 2. So if you had done it this way, you would have been used to either subtracting it or crossing off two of those a's on the bottom with 2 on the top, so you'd have a3 and b2 as well. Okay, here's our next rule. So when we have a base to a power and another power outside the brackets, we just multiply our numbers. So we'd have y to the 6, because 3 times 2 is 6. Looking at question 6. Okay, two things inside a bracket and a power. That power relates to both of those terms inside that bracket. So 2 to the power of 5 and x to the power of 5. I can write my 2 to the power of 5 as 32. So I prefer that as 32 x to the power of 5. Question 7. That power of 2 outside the bracket relates to a to the power of 5 and b to the power of 3. So a to the power of 5 all squared. 5 times 2 is 10. So we get a to the power of 10. B to the power of 3 squared. 3 times 2 is 6. So we end up with b to the power of 6. Question 8. Same rules as above, but instead of being multiplied, we're divided. So that 2 still applies to the x and to the 2. So we have x squared and 2 squared. X squared and 4 is what we end up with. Question 9. Same as above. The 2 applies to the 3. So we get 3 squared, which is 9 on the top line, equals. And on the bottom line, we've got 2y, and it's all squared, but remembering when we have two things inside the bracket, that 2 belongs to the 2, so we get 2 squared, which is 4, and y squared, which is y squared.